Welcome to Champion Minded, the podcast for those who aim for excellence, not only in the sports arena, but in life. My name is Allistair author, speaker, mindset and performance coach, and my goal is to help you unleash your unlimited potential and provide you with the tools to achieve greatness. Are you ready to become champion minded? Then let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to the Champion Minded podcast, or welcome back to the podcast. I'm Allistair McCaw. Good to have you with me this week. In this week's episode of What It Takes, we have Luke Donald. Luke is an English professional golfer who has held the #1 world ranking. He's won many prestigious awards in the game, including the PGA Tour Money List and the European Race to Dubai. Luke held the world #1 ranking for 40 weeks before Rory Mcilroy briefly took over in 2012. In this podcast, we get to talk about mindset, what makes a mentally tough golfer, some of the routines and rituals that Luke uses. We also talk about his development in the game, and especially with regards coaches. He shares his insights into what makes a great coach. We also speak about his long-time coach, Pat Goss, who's up at the Northwestern University in Illinois, in Chicago. We also talk about rivalries, and we talk about his experiences of playing alongside Tiger Woods, what that's like, which I can bet is pretty nerve-wracking and just intimidating. We speak about superstitions. We also talk about a few other things that are incredibly interesting in the preparation and what it takes to be a world #1 golfer. Guys, you're going to enjoy this one. I certainly did. I've been following Luke's career for a long time, and he's a super guy. Really appreciated him taking the time out here in Florida to chat with us here on the Champion Minded podcast. So here is Luke Donald. Luke, welcome to the Champion Minded podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
I tell you, it's you're definitely someone that I've wanted on here for a long time. I've followed your career, especially, of course, the battle with Rory Mcilroy, my fellow countryman, back in 2011 or 2012, I think it was, for the world #1. Is that right?
It was, yeah. We tussled back and forward a few times during those years. It was a fun time.
It's always great having a rivalry, isn't it? It just makes you a better, not just a better player, but a more resilient person as well, right?
Well, you need to be challenged, and I think Rory's obviously still playing great golf, and it was great to go up against him. Two very different players, but just shows that different styles can still have a chance of competing against each other.
Actually, just staying on that, I know it's a weird way to start a podcast, but for you, who have been the greatest rivalries in golf?
For me personally, or just in general?
For you personally, and also in general.
Well, me personally would be Rory. Obviously Lee Westwood a little bit, just because he was the guy that I was able to beat. In the playoff at Wentworth to get to #1. He was #1 at the time. Martin Keimer a little bit, I suppose, because, when I won against him at the match play, that was huge. He went to #1 that week, even though I beat him, but I went up to #3 in the world. So, I guess just looking at world rankings and, when I was at the top of the game, those were the kind of the guys that were competing and being very, very good. And obviously Tiger Woods as well. I've played a lot with Tiger over the years. I certainly don't have his resume, but it was fun to play a bunch of rounds with him and compete and play in major championships with him, play against him in Ryder Cups. Obviously his record outshines most people, but it was fun to be able to play with him, in some of his prime years.
Absolutely. And of the past, would you say guys like Nicholas Player, Trevino, those?
Yeah, Nicholas Player. Obviously my time frame. Tiger's been the guy that's been the one to beat. And then he hasn't had too many rivals. At one point, Vijay Singh would have been one of his rivals. I'm trying to think who else. Now obviously he's competing with some of the young guns too.
Yeah.
But
Would you say, Luke? Would you say that Mickelson Tiger is a rivalry? I mean, I know the media type of play it up a little bit, but would it go down in history as a rivalry?
Well, I think so. You take Tiger out of the picture, and Phil Mickelson has a tremendous record. I mean, it looks like he's about to win again this morning.
Yes.
They couldn't quite finish the tournament
in
the dark yesterday. So
and Phil went to
remember
finish
how many events that is for Phil, but it's a great record. And obviously against Tigers, it doesn't look quite as good, but. Still, they've had some great battles over the years. I would put that down as a rivalry, but slightly one-sided.
He plays well at Pebble Beach, doesn't he? I mean, actually, if he does win, which he should, because I think he has a 3-stroke lead, but it will be his 44th title today. So
it's pretty good. Longevity, and consistency like that, I think needs to be applauded.
Absolutely. All right, so. Luke, let's start off where I usually do on the podcast with athletes and high performers is where did it all start for you?
Well, I started playing about the age of 7. My parents bought a timeshare in Spain. We went there. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and we got 3 years of free sports, tennis, golf, at this place called La Manga Club. And I played a little bit of golf. My granddad was a good golfer. He was a scratch golfer, but passed away before I was born, sadly. So I never met him, but I think I got some good genes through my granddad. We went out to Spain. We picked up. We had a few clubs between us, and we literally played. And as soon as I started playing regularly, I just kind of really fell in love with the game. And that was about 7, 8 years old, and kind of all went off from there.
And would you say in the beginning it was more just playful, getting out and hitting a few balls and just having fun? Was that really how it began, or were you thrown straight into coaching?
No, it was more about just having fun. I really didn't get much coaching as a young age. I had a pretty natural affinity for the game, natural ability. I didn't have too many lessons as a kid. Growing up, I started getting lessons maybe more when I was 13, 14, 15, that kind of age.
Which is pretty late,
the
right?
Beginning was, pretty late, I suppose. But again, I think I just had a natural ability. My handicap dropped pretty quickly. And I had an enthusiasm to go out there all the time. I always bugging my mum to take me to the course after school. I just wanted to play as long as there was daylight. And I think I just learned technique through myself, through watching TV a little bit, just through hard work, I suppose, and just enjoying it.
Would you say you were one of those kids that was playing all the time? I'll give you an example. I have a neighbor who, he's maybe 12 or 13 years old, and he's always playing basketball in the street, and he's inside as well. You can hear the ball against the wall at all hours of the day, and we've heard of sports people at a young age that were just almost annoying, where they'd be hitting against the wall at home if they were playing tennis or whatever. Were you one of those that was always, you'd go home and you'd be putting in your bedroom, for example?
Definitely did a lot of putting on the upstairs landing of our house, where we lived, and putting into a cup, putting into a glass, whatever it might be. Did a lot of putting, chipping. We had kind of a house that was meant to be look old, even though it wasn't very old in itself, but it had wooden beams, and we'd chip over the wooden beams and that were on the floor, and just that kind of stuff. I remember doing a lot of that with especially my next older brother Christian, who ended up caddying for me for a long time on tour too. So it's nice that I had someone there with me as well. We were kind of doing it together. I think that helped.
What first attracted you to the game, Luke? You said you played tennis, you played a few other sports, but what was it about golf? Was there anything in particular?
I think I was naturally pretty good at it. I think that helped. I picked it up very quickly. but yeah, just loved it. I had it in my blood somehow. I don't know if that's again from my grandfather or what, but yeah, there was just always this wanting to be out there and wanting to compete and wanting to practice, wanting to play, wanting to challenge myself. All those kind of things that led me to putting in a lot of hours as a kid.
Where did the dream start for you? When did you know you wanted to be a professional golfer? At what age?
I would say it was probably around 16. I was down to a scratch plus 1 or 2 by then. I think I was playing for the full England side as a 16-year-old, all age groups. And I just thought, if I can be one of the best, 10 or 15 guys, amateurs in the country, then, maybe I have a chance of doing this. I still felt like I had a lot of improving to do. It wasn't like a tennis player at 15 is, time they turn pro these days, isn't it? Golf, much. For me, I wanted to make sure I was ready. So, I spent a few more years working on it and then decided to go to college and work on it a little bit further there. So it wasn't something I knew immediately at 16 that I was good enough, but I thought I had a chance.
Talking about college, because obviously it's a big thing here in the United States. Is that a route that you would recommend for a lot of young golfers to go through college?
I think it's to do with every individual. You've got to find the right place. I was very fortunate to kind of stumble across Northwestern. I was recruited by Stanford, where Tiger at the time was still part of that team. I ended up not getting into the school for various reasons, but the coach there was a former coach at Northwestern, and that's kind of how I got to Chicago and college over there. It's a place I'd never heard of growing up in England, but I went there. Fortunately, it was near a big city. I grew up near London. This was near Chicago. The cultural differences weren't too different for me. I met my coach there, who's still my coach, Pat Goss. He was very fortunate to stumble across someone that knew a lot about the game, was able to focus attention on making me a better player, and through teaching and through being a good coach. But some American colleges you can go to, the cultural differences for overseas players is very different. And you can get there, and some of the coaches really aren't coaches. They're literally just kind of managers. They just take the team from tournament to tournament, and I think it's hard for players to learn and grow. But I was very fortunate where I ended up, and it was a great place for me. And I think it's a great system they have over here. You're able to carry on your education. You're able to carry on your sport at a high level. Something we don't really have in the UK, to be able to mix those two. But certainly it was a great fit for me where I ended up.
Tell me, obviously it's a few years back now, but I often get asked this question: what would a typical day look like for a student athlete, for a golfer, for example? Would you have...
Yeah, typical was, we'd have classes in the morning and practice in the afternoon. So we would try and schedule, our school in the morning. So, somewhere between 8 to 1, 8 to 12, something like that. Then we'd go out and spend the rest of the afternoon practicing and working on a game. It made things tough. Northwestern's pretty academic. It's a good school. It's, on par with a Stanford or... even Harvard or somewhere like that. It's it's quite high level of education, but so you have to really challenge yourself in terms of balancing that, and being able to spend enough time to keep your grades up, but also spend enough time working on your game.
Let's talk about Pat Goss, your coach. So obviously he's been your coach now for 20 years? Oh, over 20 years?
Yeah, 97 I first went to college, so that's where I met him. Just over 20 years we've known each other, so yeah.
Is it typical? Is it typical in golf? Because in a lot of sports like tennis, there's chopping and changing of coaches all the time. for example, the player goes through a bad run of a few tournaments or ranking,
Right.
whatever, they change the coach. Is that typical in golf as well, or?
I think it is somewhat typical. I'm always been someone to try and keep things consistent, not chop and change too much. I did try a different coach for 1 year. While Pat remained as my short game coach, I tried to use someone for my long game for a year, and it really didn't work out very well for me. So, other than that, I've been with Pat for 22 years, so a long time. I think that familiarity is really helpful, and I feel like we've gotten a lot out of each other. He's not just a coach; he's a great friend. He knows the right things to say at the right time. He's really been a big influence in a lot of my success.
So, in your opinion, Luke, what would make a great coach, a great golf coach? Obviously, that what you're saying there is trust and the ability to say the right things at the right time. But what other traits would you say make a great coach?
Yeah, many facets to that. I think you've got to have the ability to kind of make learning fun. Again, we talk about this good language, being able to communicate the right way. I think making, turning, glass half full rather than glass half empty kind of thing. And I think, for me, I've always felt like Pat wakes up in the morning and is constantly thinking, well, how can I make Luke a better player today? And to have that kind of thought, knowing that someone is waking up every day with that kind of thought of like incremental improvement, how can I make my player a little bit better today than he was yesterday? I feel like that I've always had that feeling with Pat. He's always searching for ways for me to be better. It's not just he's just turning up, coming down to Florida, working for 2 days, goes back and doesn't think about it. I'm always kind of on his mind, and I think that's, for me, is the biggest thing that I've really enjoyed working with Pat.
I think it's really service, isn't it? Putting the player first, because a lot of times you have coaches that are chasing their own resume or chasing their own profile, but no, absolutely
Right.
Player first. Yeah. Let's talk about mindset, the mindset of a golfer. Now, I find it an incredibly unique sport because, not like squash or tennis or something where you lose a point, that's fine. A game consists of 5-6 points at least. But in golf, as we've seen, just slip of concentration for 10 seconds and you drop down the leaderboard 3 shots. We just saw, for example, yesterday at the AT&T Pebble where they were trying to finishing off in the dark and the one player 3-putted and dropped from tie 7th to tie 10th. I can't remember the name. I just read about it this morning. But just there you go. Just within a matter of a minute, you've dropped 3 places on the green. I mean, it's just unique. So the mindset of a golfer. What makes a mentally tough golfer?
Well, yeah. The hard thing about our sport is we have a lot of time to think. It's not really a reactionary sport. Yeah. That 5 hours or 4 or 5 hours we're out there playing, we might only be hitting the golf ball for, maybe less than 30 minutes of that, maybe less, maybe 20 minutes. I don't know. It's not a long time. So, managing your thoughts, but I think, what makes a golfer great mentally is that overall belief in yourself. I think someone who's a little bit more focused on the process rather than result. I think that's very similar to most sports, but just having that ability to have the right thoughts because we have so much time to think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's obviously it's a sport that you try and get out there, me as well, and have for relaxing, but it ends up frustrating at times. But how do you get rid of that last best, or should I say that last shot that you played or that mistake you made? How do you get that out of your mind? Because it's just that ability to get rid of the past. Do you have any tips for that?
Well, I think you have to go again back to focusing on small little things. Again, try not to. I think as human nature is to always kind of hold on to the things we do badly rather than the things that we're doing well. So, again, you might have hit one bad shot, but maybe if you really want to wash that out, focus on a couple putts you made the previous holes or something. But then go back into exactly the process of what you're trying to do on this one shot. Because whatever happened on that last shot has no relevance to the next shot, or it shouldn't. If you can, have very particular target, particular shot, I think that really focuses you in on what you're trying to accomplish. And, rather than having those negative thoughts kind of keep building up, concentrate on the next shot.
Obviously, pressure is a big word in sports. Any tips on that, on how to handle pressure? A big putt, or it might not be golf. There's obviously a lot of athletes that listen to the podcast, but pressure moments, how are those best handled?
Well, I think, this isn't even just sport. This is overall life. It's kind of, the question is, how do you deal with anxiety? And I think, it's kind of reframing anything into something positive. Kind of rather than going from, an attitude that you might fail into wanting to achieve something. So you're kind of having that, moving into something. You want that fear of failure. You want to turn it and spin it into something that you can do. And I think having that can-do kind of mindset is really, really important.
Let's talk about caddies, because that's another interesting point there.
Yeah.
We obviously spoke about what makes a great coach. So you have the coach during practice time, or maybe during the warm-up time, for example. But a caddy, what role do they play besides, obviously, passing the clubs? Obviously, a caddy needs to be almost like a coach, right?
They do all the day-to-day stuff and pick your clubs and help with yardages and clean the clubs and all that kind of stuff, which, is a small part of their job, really. As I said, it's a very individual sport. So, having a good relationship with your caddy and a good someone that really knows you, can sense when you're feeling pressure, when you're relaxed. I think the caddy, it's really important. Again, the language they use. Everything has to be, okay, this is where you want to go, not please avoid this or don't hit it left or this. You need to have someone that's really clear-minded about what you're trying to do and instill that into the player. And I think, through good language, that's huge. I think subconsciously that makes a big difference. And, again, the caddy has to know the personality traits of the player. Sometimes it's good not to talk to them. Sometimes they know if maybe they're feeling the anxiety, they want to up the conversation a little bit, get your mind off it, change the subject, change the narrative. So, again, having a good caddy that understands you and knows you is pretty important.
So you'd say a good caddy is type of someone that's like reading the moment in a way of just the mood and the temperature, so to say, of the player. Maybe they need to add a little bit of humor, or maybe they need to, like you just said there now, rather keep quiet, so they're reading the moment.
Yeah, there's definitely times when, I've hit a bad shot and been very angry, and, my caddies probably know that to give me a minute to just calm down. Being angry is fine as long as you can just let it go, but maybe them interjecting then would just make me more angry. So that'd be a time where you maybe let the player go for a little bit, but then once you've had that time to get rid of it, step in, focus on the next shot. Make sure, again, the instruction is very positive about what you want to do rather than not what you don't want to do, and kind of move on from there.
Excellent. Luke, let's talk about visualization. Obviously, that's a big thing in sports. Do you use visualization? Have you used it in the past?
Well, I'm always using it when I'm on the golf course. Every shot. whether I'm conscious about it or subconscious, really, I'm picking targets. I'm picking small targets. I'm picking the trajectory I want to see the golf for. I'm trying to figure out where I want to see the ball landing, how much it's going to roll out. All those things are going on up in my head and as a visual cue. So, and I've done some stuff at home too, where literally I'm sitting in a chair or sitting in bed, and before I go to bed and visualizing how I want the day to turn out the next day and stuff like that. I think that stuff is really important. The mind really is a powerful source, and it doesn't really know fantasy from reality. So if you can create a great fantasy, that's only going to serve you well when it comes to the actual reality.
Something that links to that, obviously, visualization is routines and rituals. I mean, and as we've seen in sports, the best performers have these routines and rituals down to an art. Yourself, you obviously have a ritual routine every time before you step up.
Yeah, I have a routine, and even going back, before a tournament round, I'll get to the course a certain amount of time before. It'll take me a certain time to eat breakfast, how much my warm up is, when I go to the range. So those things are staying very constant, and I think that's important, especially in high pressure situations. You want to keep things as constant as possible. But yeah, I think, and routines, especially under immense pressure when you're in the lead and stuff, are even more important, because I see a lot, even just watching golf from time to time, when players are under pressure, they tend to slow down. I think this isn't really ideal, because they become more conscious, and instead of letting their subconscious and their general routine and routines take over their rituals, I think that would serve them better, and I think if you can keep those constant as much as possible, no matter whether the pressure's high or low, then that's only going to help.
It's interesting you should say that, because in writing my second book, Champion Minded, one of the things I did for a few years was observed players with their rituals and routines, in tennis and squash and in hockey and all these things, where like you just mentioned there, that pressure moment would come, and then all of a sudden something would change. Like you said, they were either speeding up, they were either slowing down. For example, something I see in tennis, and I know you're a tennis fan as well, because I think I saw you at Wimbledon one year as well, but was that the players either start to bounce, before serving, they bounce the ball 6 times instead of the usual 3 times, and then you're thinking, hold on a second, something's going out of, and it's a pressure point, it's break point or whatever, and all of a sudden they're bouncing the ball 10 times instead of 5. You just see, okay, they're out of their routine there.
Yeah, for sure. I think pressure moments bring out more thought, and more thought causes you to, either slow down or quicken up, as you said, to try and eliminate those thoughts. But, again, the more you can stick with what you've done over and over again, the more subconscious you're going to be, and that's really kind of going back to what the zone is, as people talk about it. It's less thought, it's less conscious movements, it's just doing it automatically. And that's where, in practice, the more rituals, the more routines you can have, I think the better it's going to serve you.
Let's talk about the physical side, Luke. I mean, obviously we've seen over the years that has shifted in golf.
Sure.
As far as I can remember back, I think Vijay Singh was one of the pioneers of more fitness and working out and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Tiger took that to another level, but that got a lot of publicity. Rory a few years ago was, remember with him beefing up a little bit, bulking up a bit, that came under criticism. What would a typical physical program look like for a golfer these days?
I think it varies. There's all kinds of different things we're doing. As you said, you mentioned quite a few of them, but the amount and frequency of golfers working out now has really, really increased. I think, there's obviously been a big debate about technology and how far we're hitting the ball and stuff, and technology certainly playing a role. But I also believe some of the last few games in the last 5-10 years have really come from players really understanding, TrackMan, allowing the players, force plates, 3D, all this kind of knowledge that we have. It's allowing us to really better understand how the body works, how we're able to create force, how we're able to create speed. And that really has driven some of the distance too. Not just technology, but technology is obviously playing a huge part too. But I've done all kinds of things over my career, from quite heavy lifting to gain strength in the off season, to lots of medicine ball stuff for speed. Obviously right now my concentration is really just to get back to 100% health. So a lot of back stuff, a lot of core stuff. But yeah, I think it's a lot more in depth than most people would think golfers are doing.
One of my first memories, I actually should have said the first tournament that I ever watched was the $1 Million down in South Africa, and this was probably 25 years ago maybe. But funny, talking about physicality, Bernhard Langer is obviously one of those that comes to mind. And one of the clubs I train at here down in Boca Raton, he's there sometimes. And, he stands with this medicine ball for a good 15 to 20 minutes and just does swings. And it's a 12-pound, 15-pound ball, which is pretty heavy. And, I mean, if you still look at Bernhard now, he's a physical beast. I mean, I don't know, how old is Bernhard now? Maybe...
He must be 60 or 59, 60. Yeah, he just won again, I think, last week on the Champions Tour. So
it's unreal.
I read somewhere that he's all-time money leader on the Champions Tour. So yeah, he just keeps going and going and going. He's like a machine, as you said.
Unreal. And I mean, my first memory there, going back to the $1 Million, was I think he was one of the first players that played with the long putter. What do you call it? Long handle or?
Yeah, long putter. Yeah,
long putter, and I think he shot
broomstick. They sometimes call it.
Yeah, he shot at 18 over, and I mean he was there just to work on that. I think it was one of the first few months that they brought it out, and obviously the gallery thought this was incredibly entertaining. But we've seen guys like Adam Scott and so on go on to use it as well. But yeah, just a funny memory there from back in the day, showing my age.
And his ability to shoot 18 over and then just stick with it. A lot of people would get frustrated about it and just give it up. But he knew something was there, and obviously he's had a lot of success with it.
Well, that's it. It's something that sticks in my mind, is that it wasn't, deterring him, or he wasn't distracted by it. He was. You could see he was working on something, and he didn't care what the score was. And just looking at that longer term goal.
And that's very important in the way you practice in golf. Sometimes you want to do just reps where you're working on something fundamental, and really you should have no worry about where the ball is going. If you're hitting it solid, if you're controlling trajectory, that is not important, when you're doing just rep work. And then there are times when you're really working on just shot making, and then it becomes important, where your start line is, where it's finishing, so breaking your practice up a couple different ways is really important too.
Last question on the physical side. I mean, they at golf tournaments now they have portable gyms. Is that correct? That Techno Gym or whoever it is would bring around a truck with a gym in it?
Yeah, European Tour have a trailer. The US Tour have two trailers. So the European Tour have physios and a sort of portable gym in there. They have a squat rack. Some kind of pushing thing, and free weights, and you can do a pretty good gym work. And in the US too, they have a mobile gym with some treadmills and free weights and dual cable racks and stuff like that. So I mean, those are pretty busy places too. You'll walk in after a round and there'll be a good 10, 12 people in there. It's pretty crowded, but just shows how much people are working out as golfers now.
Yeah, I was at the Byron Nelson. I think it was last year, or was it the year before? And I remember Matt Kutcher in the gym on the concept rower, giving it a good go. So yeah, it's definitely changed the physical side in golf. So all right, last few questions, Luke. This has been awesome, and I appreciate your time. I know the listeners are really going to enjoy this because it's a little bit of a mixed bag of mindset, physical preparation, all these things behind the scenes.
Sure.
Any funny superstitions or interesting
I
superstitions?
don't really have too many superstitions, but I do have, rituals and routines like we talked about. I like to use a quarter to mark the ball. I always mark my ball the same way. I use a purple dot, which purple was northwestern colors. I don't know. I always have my coin and my pitch mark repair in my left pocket, my tees in my right, because I try to and that's mostly for like a physical thing. I want to try and remember to mark my ball one way and put my tee with the other hand, so I'm like balancing myself out a little bit. So they do have reasons behind them, but I don't know if those would be considered superstitions.
I think they are.
Some golfers are very superstitious. I would say I'm on the lesser end.
Yeah, I mean, looking at tennis, a lot of the guys are so superstitious there. You look at Nadal. Have you seen him with his bottles at the changeover?
His bottle, yeah, very, very meticulous, yeah.
Funny story. One of the players I worked with for 4 years, Kevin Anderson, who's now number 5 in the world. It was in Australia, and I think it was 3rd or 4th round, and Kevin was playing Rafa, and Rafa was just dominating it. And Kevin hit a mishit on the return and knocked over one of Rafa's bottles. And obviously, the public know now that Rafa's very superstitious with that. But that's when I turned next to the coach next to me and said, "I think we might have a chance now." Because
did he go over and replace it immediately?
He did, yeah, and he just had a smile on his face, and I thought, hey, we might have a chance.
Don't aim for the corner, aim for the bottle.
Exactly.
If you're playing Rafa.
I mean, how's that for a rivalry, right? Rafa and Federer, but now obviously Novak. I mean, he's just incredible. He's almost like the uninvited. Yeah.
I've always found tennis, interesting because it does seem like, the top 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeded players in every tournament tend to get to the semifinals. Like in golf, through 4 rounds, it's not quite that one-sided. The favorites don't always win. It's a little bit less known. If you're a gambler and like betting on who's going to win a golf tournament is very hard to predict, but a little bit easier in tennis. I'm just not sure why there's such a difference between the top players in tennis and golf.
I think it's just, obviously with golf, you're playing yourself. You're playing at the scoreboard. As we're in tennis, you're playing an opponent. And I think, honestly, if I look back at, the last 8 years, we had the top 4, Murray, Rafa, Novak, and Federer, and they were just that much just better than other guys, but also just their aura. The guys, I've spoken to players obviously who play them, and they just said you just feel it. You're playing against like an icon on the other side. It gets into your head a little bit. And would you, from a golf sense, and obviously you've played alongside Tiger a few times. Describe what it's like to play with Tiger, because obviously the galleries are going to be bigger. There's going to be more hype at the tournament. How does that change things?
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to play with Tiger, but in a way you felt like it was almost a 1 or 2 shot penalty playing with him, because it came with a lot of crowd disturbance, more pressure. Really, you definitely feel more anxiety, more nerves on that tee. Not just because of him, just because of the whole atmosphere and what he brings with it. But he definitely had an aura. There wasn't much talking. There was, just got this feeling that he meant business, and and that was, it's always. Never easy to play with Tiger. I don't think you'd find too many players that would think it was an advantage playing with Tiger. I think they'd find that he had the advantage with what he brought.
And obviously talking about Superstitions, obviously the red on Sunday, that would bring another
Correct.
little bit of element of, pressure to the opponents.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was the funny story. I obviously got paired. I was in the final round with him at the PGA Championship in 2006 at Medina, and I was with Polo, Ralph Lauren at the time, and they script all my outfits for majors, and I was red shirt and a white pants. Obviously, that was scripted 2 weeks before the tournament, and obviously didn't know I was going to get paired with Tiger on Sunday, but I obviously thought, what am I going to do? Like, Tiger wears red, am I going to change my shirt? And I thought, I'm not going to change my shirt because that's like losing the first hole to him in match play already. Yeah. So I stuck with it. It was obviously a big talking point with the media and stuff, but he ended up winning and I didn't. But it was a funny thing that he built this aura that nobody else could wear a red shirt because he wears it on Sunday. So that was kind of my fun red shirt story anyway.
Yeah. Or like, how dare somebody wear a red shirt on Sunday type of thing.
Yeah, so. And it wasn't meant to be that way. It was just being scripted. It certainly wasn't meant to be like, I'm going to wear a red shirt because, screw you. I'm wearing a red shirt. See if it works for me. It was just, I felt like if I changed my shirt, that's like almost like defeat right there, without even stepping onto the first tee. So I stuck with it. It didn't work out, but I'm glad I stuck with it.
Was it last year in the Ryder Cup? You were named as vice captain to Thomas Bjorn, 2018 Ryder Cup.
I was in Paris. Yeah, so that was fun.
How was that experience?
We'd rather been playing. But
how was that experience, Luke?
It was good. It was obviously seeing it from a different side. As a player, the Ryder Cup is a very, very busy week. A lot of pressure. Everything happens quite quickly. Not much time for thought. As a vice captain, you get to step back and see how the players are thinking, how they're playing, taking it all in. And it was great to be a part of that team. I enjoyed working with Thomas and the other vice captains and trying to come up with great partnerships and great strategy to give ourselves the best chance. And obviously we were victorious over a very, very strong American team. So it was rewarding in that way to get the result. But it was great to be in the mix and be amongst the guys and feeling that Ryder Cup aura and pressure that makes that event so much fun.
It's an incredible event, isn't it? It even watches it even makes non-golf watching people watch golf. I mean, you hear people talking about the Ryder Cup and they don't even play golf, but it's it's like Wimbledon. They're going to watch that event, that final weekend, So, excellent. Right, Luke, home straight. We're going to go on to quickfire questions, one word or a sentence.
Okay.
Ready?
Sure, go.
All right. Favorite city?
Probably Rome. I've only been there once, but loved it. Maybe Chicago in the US, and obviously big fan of London.
There we go. Favorite food?
Has to be my mum's old recipe for lasagna. Just something I remember growing up. Just brings back good memories.
Excellent. I'll tell you, just I'm a big fan of Nando's, and every time I go to Chicago, I pretty much eat lunch and dinner at Nando's for about 4 or 5 days in a row there. So it's one of my favorite parts of Nando's because we don't have them down here in Florida. So
a little peri-peri, huh?
Favorite other sport to watch besides golf?
I do. Having been here for 20 years in the US, I do watch the NFL quite a lot. Obviously, love football in England. I love watching ice hockey too live. I think it's so much better experience live than
Blackhawks fan?
Blackhawks fan for sure. Yeah, got to see them win a couple of Stanley Cups, which was fun.
And football. I'm going to ask you who your favorite football team is.
Well, I'm a Bears fan. That's a tough fan to be lately. But actually, they showed a lot of promise last season. great defense. So.
Yeah, I picked it up. I was watching your tweets last week, obviously with the Super Bowl final. So I mean, Tom Brady, what a legend, right?
Yeah, there's someone who's really defying age. Nobody has done what him and his coach Belichick have done, and he thinks he can go for another 4 or 5 years. So amazing. Why not? I mean, he keeps winning. So
yeah.
Why stop now?
I mean, like him or not, it's just an incredible athlete. I mean, it's insane. And obviously we're in the States here, so we say soccer, obviously, instead of football. Favorite soccer team?
Tottenham Hotspur.
I had a feeling you were a Tottenham fan, huh? You guys are missing Kane at the moment, huh?
We're hanging in there, though. Tough game yesterday. I watched the game against Leicester, but they hung in for a 3-1 victory.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Son and Eriksen are quality players, so you have good players to back up. So,
sure.
I'm a Liverpool fan, so have been since I was 5. So we're like, it's getting a little bit close now, too close for comfort, but should be fun.
Yep.
All right, favorite athlete, male and female.
For me, probably just because it has a personal touch, is Michael Jordan. Become quite good friends with him over the years, and I think I didn't get to watch him too much in his prime, but I just think it's amazing to think that 15, 20 years after he stopped playing, he's still just as relevant as he is today. I think it's pretty impressive what he did. I was also a big fan of Muhammad Ali.
Mm. And on the female side?
Favorite athlete, female side. I don't know. Maybe just because she's just done her last race. Lindsey Vonn, amazing skier.
Yeah.
To think about that one a little bit. Yeah.
What a career as well. She won the downhill yesterday, didn't she?
I think she did, yeah.
Yeah,
pretty impressive career. I think 80 times or something she won, 60-something World Cup races. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And come back from a lot of injuries, which is...
Exactly, yeah. Okay. Putt-like. Complete the sentence. Putt-like.
To be honest, I wouldn't take any other person than me. I know it's a little...
Nothing wrong
for me to say, but I got to take myself.
I would have to agree with that, actually. That's why I started with putt. Drive like.
Ayrton Senna. No, I'm just kidding. if I'm sure you meant golf, but for golf, the modern day driver, Dustin Johnson, hits it far and straight.
Yeah, true. Actually, talking about motorsport, I'm a big motorsport fan. But for you, Senna or Schumacher?
I would probably go with Senna just because of the older technology in the cars and having to control that. Schumacher was unbelievable, but had a little bit more technology behind him. So, a purist, I would say, and Senna.
Have you seen the movie Senna?
I have. Amazing.
Excellent, isn't it?
Yeah, highly recommend to anyone.
That lap around Monaco
Need to watch
is
it
insane.
again.
Yeah, that lap around Monaco is insane.
In the rain. Yeah, amazing.
All right. Favorite playing partners?
Well, playing partners, obviously had some good Ryder Cup partners over the years. Sergio, Lee Westwood, we've had some good victories together, so I'll probably say those two.
Okay.
And anyone who plays fast.
Tea or coffee?
I have one cappuccino every morning, so I'm a coffee guy. I don't really drink much tea.
Oh, especially
sometimes drink some herbal tea at night, but
I thought maybe being
no
British.
No English breakfast.
You know what's funny? When I'm in the States, it's all coffee. When I'm in Europe, it's tea. It just seems to go that way. So, right, comedy or drama?
I would go drama. Yeah, I like a little bit of suspense. I like both, but drama would probably get the edge.
Okay, favorite movie?
Probably Shawshank, I think.
Yeah, good movie.
Comedy, maybe Trading Places.
Okay, haven't seen that.
Caddyshack, obviously, is the Caddyshack gets best golf movie. That's an obvious one.
Yeah, brilliant. One word to describe yourself.
I would say loyal. Yeah, people who are in my circle, I'm pretty loyal to.
Yeah, obviously tells with having the same coach for over 20 years, doesn't it? So, excellent. Right, final question, Luke, and this has really been a great podcast so far. What, in your opinion, does it take to be champion-minded?
Well, I think ultimately someone who isn't afraid to fail, who sees obstacles as challenges rather, and kind of is always looking for those incremental improvements or gains. Just little by little, getting better each and every day.
Perfectly said. Luke, is there any social media platforms out there that the listeners can follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I think I'm just at Luke Donald, and same with Instagram on at Luke Donald. So check out those. I do some video shout-outs too on Cameo, so have a look for those.
Excellent. Luke, appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. Best of luck for the season ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And
thanks for your time.
So guys, there you have it. A big thank you to Luke Donald for coming on to the podcast, former world #1 golfer. How cool is it to get into the mindsets, preparation and lifestyle of some of the best athletes in the world? And that is what Champion Minded is all about. Remember guys that this podcast is available on YouTube and on iTunes. Let's stay connected on social media. I'm at Allistair McCall on Twitter, Instagram, Be Champion Minded, and on Facebook, Allistair McCall page. So remember, you were made for greatness. Now go do the work. Until next time guys, stay champion minded.